In today's history lesson, we're going to be focusing on the question, what were some of the major battles of World War II? And our specific focus is going to be the evacuation of Dunkirk. Now you may be thinking, what exactly was the evacuation of Dunkirk? Now the evacuation of Dunkirk was also known as Operation Dynamo, or the Miracle of Dunkirk. And it was the evacuation of Allied soldiers during World War II from the beaches of Dunkirk between the 26th of May and the 4th of June in 1940. Now, if you remember from previous lessons, the Allied soldiers were the British, the French, the Belgians, and also some Americans. The operation happened after Belgian, British, and French troops were cut off and surrounded by German troops during the Battle of France, which was one of the battles during World War II. In a speech, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill called this a colossal military disaster, saying that the whole root and core and brain of the British Army had been stranded at Dunkirk and seemed about to perish or be captured. However, Winston Churchill seemed to change his tune quite quickly. He went from doom and gloom to a miracle. In his "We Will Fight on the Beaches" speech on the 4th of June, he hailed their rescue as a miracle of deliverance. And as we go through today's lesson, I want you to think about whether you think it was a disaster or whether you think it was a miracle. Now, I've been talking about Dunkirk a lot, but probably most of you don't actually know where it is, so we're going to look at the geography of where it lies. Dunkirk is located on the northern coastline of France, near the Franco-Belgian border, so that means it's found near the border between France and Belgium. Looking at the map on the screen, you'll notice that little red dot where Dunkirk is. And near it, you'll see that little black squiggly line, and that is the border between France and Belgium. So Dunkirk was the area that the Allied forces had retreated to once Belgium and France were invaded by Nazi Germany. So now we've had to think about what the evacuation of Dunkirk was and where it actually is. We're going to look at a timeline of events that occurred in the lead up to the evacuation and during the evacuation. So, on the 3rd of September 1939, British troops were sent to France after Germany had invaded Poland. Then, on the 10th of May 1940, Germany invade the Netherlands and Belgium, which allows them easy access to France because France is beside the Netherlands and Belgium. And once Germany had invaded Netherlands and Belgium, they advanced so quickly that countries started to surrender. Countries looked at what Germany was able to do and the advances that they were making and decided that they couldn't put up enough of a fight. And so they surrendered to Germany, thinking that was the easiest and best option for their people. Because of this, French and British troops had to retreat to the beaches as deep water ports were captured. So because Germany was advancing so quickly, the British and French troops had to basically take a big step back, and the only places they could go were the beaches because all of the deep water ports had been taken by the Germans. Now, why do you think Germany would have wanted to take deep water ports? Now, a big part of this reason was probably to block more aid from coming in from different countries to the nations that had surrendered. But it also might have been because Germany really liked to attack ships that carried food across the ocean to countries like Britain. So it was a good idea for the Germans to take these ports where they could send out ships to attack other ships. So all of this was going on. There was lots of fighting, countries were surrendering. Germany looked as though they were really going to win the war because they were advancing so quickly and no one seemed to be able to stop them, not even the British or the French that had come to help the countries that had surrendered. However, for some reason, on the 24th of May 1940, Hitler mysteriously gives a stop order. He basically says to all of his troops, no, we're not advancing anymore, we're going to stop here. Let's not keep on going forward. And to this day, no one really knows why he decided to do this. But having made this decision, this gave the opportunity for Allied forces to make preparations because Germany wasn't advancing anymore. So Hitler's mysterious decision gave the British and French troops opportunity to make preparations on the beaches to fight him if he started advancing again. However, on the 26th of May 1940, Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, launched Operation Dynamo with the goal of evacuating 45,000 troops in 48 hours before the beaches were taken by Nazi Germany. And this evacuation, this Operation Dynamo, went on for 10 days, which was a really, really long time. And across these 10 days, at its peak, 1,000 troops were evacuated per hour. So in a single hour, 1,000 people were evacuated off the beaches and onto boats back to Britain, which is a lot of people in a very short amount of time. Then, on the 29th of May 1940, the BBC sent out an appeal on the radio for men with experience with motorboats to help. And this was because the water was so shallow at Dunkirk that the Royal Navy ships were too big to dock and rescue troops. So all of the large ships that Britain had sent to try and rescue these troops were kind of a waste of time and pointless because they couldn't get anywhere near to the beach to actually rescue these men. So they had to send all these tiny little boats, these rowboats and motorboats, to pick up all of the soldiers and take them back to Britain. And this was a moment in history where very ordinary people played their part to support the war effort. Lots of ordinary men went across the Channel, the English Channel, and saved lots of troops from the German soldiers that were coming to get them. Then finally, after 10 days on the 4th of June 1940, Operation Dynamo ended with about 338,000 troops rescued. So over 10 days, they managed to rescue a lot of people, which was amazing. Now, it's all very well and good me telling you about Dunkirk and trying to explain what happened, but I don't actually know what it was like. So I'm going to ask you to pause this video here and in a moment watch the following video to see real life footage of events that happened during the evacuation of Dunkirk. So on Microsoft Teams, I have put a link which says video clip 1, and that's the one that you're going to need to click on to watch. And this video includes footage from a soldier that was evacuated at Dunkirk, and he used his personal camera to capture these events. So what you see in this video actually happened at Dunkirk, which is pretty incredible that we've managed to keep this footage and we can watch it today. So pause the video now and go and watch video clip 1. Wasn't that clip amazing? So now we've seen some real life footage and we've thought about the events that actually happened at the evacuation of Dunkirk. Let's try and think about that question, whether it was a miracle or whether it was a disaster. With the majority of Britain and France's entire armies in one area, surrounded by the Germans, this could have been the turning point of the war. And then, for reasons that are still mysterious, Hitler ordered his troops to halt. This meant that the Allies were gifted with time. Naval ships, vehicles, passenger ferries, fishing boats, yachts and boats owned simply for pleasure were assembled. And a handful of civilians even joined the mission, sailing out into the Channel voluntarily. And over the course of 9 days, this fleet, supported by British planes overhead, was able to save most of the troops. So in that respect, it really was a miracle, because we don't know why Hitler chose to stop, and we were able to rescue loads and loads of people from a really horrible death. However, the reality of Dunkirk was, as Winston Churchill described it, a colossal military disaster. He said that wars are not won by evacuations. And that may be true, but it is hard not to see Dunkirk as a pivotal moment in the war, as a moment that really changed things for the British and French troops, and also really lost things for the Germans. In reality, the British and French made a lot of mistakes at Dunkirk. For some reason, they decided to evacuate from a beach, which was not a very well protected area. However, things seemed to work out for us for whatever reason, and we need to be really thankful for that. So, having listened to me ramble on and on and on about what happened at Dunkirk, I would like you to create a comic strip that records the events of the evacuation of Dunkirk using the template that is provided and is on Microsoft Teams. You're going to need to go back to that timeline from these slides to help you decide what goes in each box. And you can either do that by rewinding this video, or I've also attached the PowerPoint to Microsoft Teams so you can click through to the right slides there. You're then going to need to draw a picture of each event in the comic strip. And once you've done that, I would like you to take a photo of your comic strip and hand it in on Microsoft Teams. Now, the template I've provided is a PDF document, so you're either going to need to print it out or draw your own if you do not have a printer, because PDFs unfortunately cannot be edited. Now, just before you get into creating your comic strip, I wanted to mention the fact that there's lots of real life audio clips about Dunkirk in the BBC archives. And on the screen, I have shown you links to a couple of these video clips if you're really interested in this major event in history. I've also put these links on Microsoft Teams so you can find those and listen to them if you want. And they're really interesting. They contain real audio from the radio at the time when the Dunkirk evacuation was happening. And some of the ones that I thought you might want to look at was there's one where a reporter talks about troops returning to Britain. There's another one, which is the original broadcast asking for help with the evacuation. And there's a final clip that includes stories from 4 members of the BEF, which was the British Expeditionary Force. And it's their stories, their real life accounts of what happened during the evacuation of Dunkirk. Now, the nerdy part of me finds this all really, really fascinating. And so I thought, I like this. I like hearing real life stories of what happened in the past. So a few of you might want to listen to them as well. And I thought I couldn't not share them because I've enjoyed listening to them so much and I find them really fascinating. So I've included all of these on Microsoft Teams just in case you want to listen to a few of them. Anyway, you've come to the end of the video now, so I've put the comic strip, the activity that you need to do, back on the screen. I would like you to pause the video now and go and create your comic strip, and then you really need to remember, take a photo of it so you can hand it back in on Teams. Hope that you enjoy this activity, and I look forward to seeing all of your amazing work. Bye!